Welcome into the Sports Shuffle. I am Flying Ryan Gilchrist here with, as always,
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
and I can't pick games. I'm getting bad at. I'm getting worse at picking games.
It was close. I mean,
It was
Tennessee
close.
Tennessee had a chance. Just absolutely brutal what happened to Traylon Burks though near the end. I mean, that very scary injury.
Yeah, fortunately he was able to walk onto the bus on his own, so it sounds like probably a concussion that he will be trying to figure it out next week. Probably out. It is a Thursday to a Sunday game next week for the Titans, so maybe he gets okay, but. Yeah, scary moment there as the Pittsburgh Steelers win 20-16 over the Tennessee Titans. Will Levis looked good, looked bad, looked like a rookie at a lot of points. So kind of
All,
what you expected. He did look like the better quarterback of the two, though, in my opinion.
all Matt Canada had to do is come down from the booth and be on the sideline.
Najee Harris, Derrick
It's
Henry, both
magic.
with good games. Deontay Johnson, first
Finally,
touchdown
finally
in
got
an
in.
eon and a half.
Yeah, you know it's been a while when the last time he scored a touchdown was thrown to him by Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, he's been retired for a little bit, but he does get his first touchdown in a long time. Immediately after dropping what would have been a touchdown on the play before.
Welcome back to Fantasy Relevance, Deontay Johnson. Thank God.
Yeah, the refs had a key role in this game, but I don't think they were bad. It was just a very active night for the refs. They had to get things called because there were a lot of penalties in that game.
Yeah, and just Pittsburgh, it feels like it's Groundhog Day every day with that offense, but somehow they win again inexplicably.
Yeah, but the Steelers looked like the worst 5-3 team in the league. Every bit of it, as they do win again. Najee Harris, though, getting a touchdown. He looked a lot better than he has in previous weeks. It's
Derrick
got to be
Henry
encouraging.
returning to a little bit of fantasy relevance there.
Derrick Henry looked like Derrick Henry once again. I mean, a lot of carries, 75 yards, did get a touchdown, a little bit of receiving game work, which is a nice benefit as well. We'll see about Will Levis long term. They're not committing to him after this week as of yet. Of course, Ryan Tannehill is there. He's been there for a while. He's serviceable. He knows this offense, but I mean, Tennessee is now 3-5. It might be time for Vrabel and the Titans to see if Will Levis is the guy, and
Might
if
as
they're
well.
not, they can set themselves up to make
Might
another pick
as
next
well. I think this year you're just pretty much you flush. It's getting to that point.
year. Yeah, with Tannehill, I thought if he was healthy, he was a trade candidate for the Vikings opening once Kirk Cousins got hurt, but he is still dealing with the ankle injury. So we'll see what happens with the Titans long term. But Joel gets another win, and I get another loss because I don't know how to pick games anymore.
It was close. I mean,
It was
seriously,
close.
I was sweating it going in. I'm saying I'm waiting for one of those Will Levis long bombs just out of nowhere to retake the lead. Thankfully, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Will Levis picked off in the end zone, which means he got them driving. He had to be aggressive at the end. They were about 20 yards out. So no timeouts. You have to try. He got him into a position, but ultimately did throw an interception on the last play of the offensive game for the Tennessee Titans. That led to a one kneel down finishing stretch for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Second good. One could call it the second good Thursday night football game in a row because
Yeah.
Bucks Bills came down to the end last week. So
yeah. All right, some news today. Josh Palmer not practicing. Of course, he is filling in for Mike Williams, who was out for the season. He has a knee injury, but he did return to play last week, so probably just rest, but he has a Monday night game, so keep an eye on that.
and of course Matthew Stafford not playing.
Matthew Stafford is out, along with Kyler Murray, who is not activated by the 4 p.m. deadline. He has to be activated for next week, or he will be shut down for the season per the temporary IR rules. So we'll see Clayton Tune this week, and most likely there is the conspiracy theory out there that they activate him just so they knew they could shut him down so they can go after that number one overall pick. But
Another name causing a little bit of uncomfortable things with your roster yet. Dameon Pierce not going to play this week.
yeah, Dameon Pierce
big with
to
a
the bench.
bye
That means Singletary going to have a good role this week against your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not a great run defense to go against, but no Dameon Pierce. He hasn't been great for fantasy, so maybe he wasn't in your lineup to begin with, but he is not going to be available for this week. Rams promoted Dresser Win Yes, dresser, like what you put your clothes in. Dresser win to the active roster to provide depth through Matthew Stafford, who is officially still questionable, but almost certainly not going to play.
Okay, then there's a name.
Yeah, like I said, Clayton Tune starting in place of Kyler Murray for this week. Giants have signed wide receiver Gunnar Olszewski to the active roster. They are going to get Daniel Jones back because he was cleared immediately after.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, it's better than Tommy, don't call me Danny DeVito. That was there last week.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett both off of the injury report, expected to play against the Ravens in what should be a pretty solid game this week. Probably the best game in the early window.
One of the better matchups.
Yeah. I think that's the best game of the early window this weekend. Let's see who else. Anybody else of major note this week? Robert Woods also out for the Texans. And I think that is the biggest. Amari DiMercado not going to play for the Cardinals at running back.
Oh,
Justin Fields yesterday, first day of throwing.
Can you imagine how many people want a fab refund after that?
Yeah. Although Justin Fields' first day of throwing since the injury on October 5th has to use a glove, but it's at least better than it was. And yeah, that's the big one. All right. So it's time for Joel to kick my butt in picks again. And we start with the one that I really hope he agrees with me on. Miami at Kansas City, but it's in Frankfurt, Germany, 9:30 start time. Set your lineups tonight for that game. Don't forget, because 9:30 start time, especially not on the East Coast, will start even
this
earlier.
is actually a game that's a good matchup and has major fantasy relevance, especially with the mini Mageddon.
Yeah, major fantasy implications. Both of these teams are 6-2, so top of the AFC is in play here because Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Jacksonville all being 6-2. Win here, they could end up the day outright number one overall. I don't know if that's going to happen, but yeah. Miami, you're playing Tua, you're playing Tyreek, you're playing Waddle. Mostert, I think, is still in play, but it's not as much of a must play as it used to be. Kansas City's got a very good defense, so temper your expectations for at least some of them this week. And then for the Kansas City Chiefs, it's Kelsey, it's Mahomes, and it's Pacheco. Probably end the list. Rashee Rice could be a very interesting long-term play, a depth play, but it's not something I'm really comfortable with. But this game is overseas. These overseas games can get a little bit weird. I think it's the best record game that's ever been played outside of the U.S., I think, at 6-2 and 6-2. So combined 12-4. Joel, it's a big game for both teams, big game for the fantasy, and a big game for you to hopefully pick Miami because you're doing it right. Who do you got?
Yes, as you said that, I sort of you take a look at this game, and I think most people's basic instinct is to go the way of the Chiefs, but you have to ask, what has KC done this year that we are impressed with? Jalen Ramsey is going to be back, a huge, huge boost to Miami's secondary. And another little interesting factoid, Miami has only allowed 3 tight end TDs all season. We're talking about a game total of 50.5, and the Chiefs are not even favored by a field goal. So what does that tell you? That other than this game is going to be good, as one team I think we will leave Germany with 3 losses. Waddle's return definitely helps to bolster the Fish, who reeled a little bit after that beat down by the Eagles, but then they bounced back big against the Pats, and they can really go all out, as next week is a bye here. Plus, Mahomes might not be back to 100%, still getting over that flu, and having to travel to Germany. That can't be good when you're trying to get better. Very slight edge to the Dolphins here. I think they get an early surprise win to start things off for week 9, as Tyreek Hill has to have this game circled all year long on his calendar. He's going to want to absolutely destroy Kansas City. I'm picking Dolphins.
That's good. I'm taking Miami as well. I agree with you. The Tyreek Hill revenge factor is going to play. I think he has a monster game. But I think the bigger one is you mentioned Jalen Ramsey, but it's also Xavier Howard should be back this week. Javon Holland will be back this week for that defensive secondary that
But Mahomes is coming off of, obviously the flu, but one of his worst games in recent memory.
I mean, if the Dolphins are smart, they'll put one of those corners on Travis Kelce and have a linebacker nearby and just say, hey, if you can beat us with Pacheco and you can beat us with these sorry wide receivers you have, congrats, you've earned it.
You
But
mean like Sky Moore and Kadarius? Hopefully he doesn't drop
Rashee
the
Rice
ball.
is their best receiver.
Yeah.
You can put Ramsey and Long on Travis Kelce and say, okay, the other guys, you got to beat us. And Miami beat Denver 70-20. Denver beat Kansas City 24-9 last week. So the offense for Kansas City hasn't been good. Miami, even in their bad games, their offense has been pretty solid. So I'm going to take the Dolphins in this one. And yes, I am definitely biased. But the team getting healthier, I think, is a big part. And I mean, I've been sick for 9 days now. So Mahomes maybe still isn't over the flu. We'll see. I'm sure it won't be talked about at all if he's still sick.
Yeah. What will we talked about more, Mahomes and the flu or Taylor Swift?
Moving on. Minnesota at Atlanta. Taylor Heinicke will be starting for the Atlanta Falcons, and a guy you've probably never heard of whose last name is Hall starting for the Minnesota Vikings. It will be Joshua Dobbs going forward, but this week it is the 5th round or the undrafted rookie, whatever he is. He's not very good. For the Vikings, I think you can still play TJ Hawkinson because usually the tight end is the best friend of a young quarterback. Jordan Addison's been very good with the bye weeks this week. You may still have to play him, but I think you limit your exposure to a lot of players in this game. You're going to play Bijan Robinson. No Drake London, I think, brings Kyle Pitts more into play. But it's not a big-time great matchup. There's a lot of bad quarterback matchups this week. This might be the headliner for bad matchups. This might be the headliner. Both of these teams, though, right around 500. Both of these teams not really in the divisional race for Minnesota, but still in that wild card mix if they can get some wins.
Somehow.
Atlanta definitely has the division at their grasp because the division is bad. So who gets the win?
Yeah, when you're talking about not a great match, 37-point total, not even 40. Add to that, changing QBs for both teams puts absolutely everything in a major state of flux for this game. One has to give Atlanta the nod here, I think, because the rocket scientist is not going to play for Minnesota this week. Atlanta DST against an untested rookie might be a sneaky stream option that I'm picking Atlanta this week because even with the Arthur Smith factor, and trust me, you've seen Atlanta, that is a big factor this year. If they lose this, he absolutely, completely sucks. Probably a downer week for Addison and Osborne and even Hawkinson managers, but Bijan Moore, that is all. Yeah, I'm not loving this game. Yeah, I think this game would normally be a pass, but I'm picking Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm taking Atlanta as well. I do want to throw some caution out there that last week Atlanta played an untested rookie quarterback in Will Levis, and Will Levis looked very, very good. That's not to say it's going to happen again, but that being said, this is definitely not Will Levis coming into the fold. So I'm going to take, instead of Jaren Hall, I'm going to take Taylor Heinicke. We've seen Heinicke at least do it at the NFL level. They have a better defense. They have a better running game, and they're going to lean on both those the best they can. So I'm going to take Atlanta to win here. And we move on to the best early window game.
Baltimore Ravens.
I got to say, I'm really impressed with the fact there's at least one very good game in pretty much every time slot all week. Maybe Chargers Jets not the sexiest, but it should be an entertaining one none the same. Seattle at Baltimore. Seattle 5-2, leading the NFC West, second in the NFC. Baltimore, 6-2 in that four-way tie for first place in the AFC, leading the AFC North. For Seattle, Ken Walker, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, definitely in your lineup. You could make the depth play, a DFS play of JSN in your lineup. And maybe, just maybe, this could be a Charbonnet game as well. For Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Zay Flower, and Gus Edwards are your best options there. Desperate times could call for desperate measures, though, for an Odell Beckham Jr. or a Justice Hill. Baltimore has looked dominant and at times very bad. It's one of those weird things where when they win, they'll beat the Lions by 32 and then struggle against a team like the Colts. So they've had a couple head scratcher losses. They've had a couple statement wins. Seattle, kind of the same way. Who gets the win here?
Yeah, after that hiccup against the Steelers, the Ravens have just been on a rampage, dominating the Titans, the Cards, and absolutely making the Lions, as you just mentioned, look like mere mortals. While Seattle and Geno can be surgically dangerous when it matters, it's hard going against this Ravens defense. Are Metcalf and Lockett enough to get the job done? I think the Ravens are the better team here, as an over 40 total might be nice for fantasy on both sides. As I'm picking Ravens, as the Seahawks are about to have a very, very rough month ahead. When you look at that schedule, and you got to cringe. So Seahawks are good, just not good enough to go against Baltimore and beat the Ravens at home. And here's an interesting fact about the Seattle defense. Seattle defense has played PJ Walker, Josh Jacobs, Daniel Jones, and Andy Dalton. Ready for this one? Dalton put up 27 points on them. I'm picking Ravens.
I think the Ravens are the better team, but I'm taking Seattle in this one. Baltimore seems to be like what we've always seen with the Cowboys this year, where you really start to believe this is a team that can go on a run, that can be dominant. Lamar Jackson's the MVP conversation. As soon as they start getting that big buzz, it seems like they fall flat. And this feels like a good opportunity for them to fall flat. Yes, it's a home game, but Seattle's a very quality opponent. Their defense can get after it. And it just feels like one of those where we're going to go after this and go, what happened to Baltimore? It's a hunch. Again, I think if we pick this game at a best of 7 or 7-game set, Baltimore's probably winning 5 of the 7. But I feel like this is going to be one of those other two.
Never know when Seattle's going to be able to sneak one out.
And you know what? There's been massive upsets every week. This one, not as massive, but it's still definitely an upset. And we move on.
One that's probably not going to be an upset.
Yeah. Arizona at Cleveland. Deshaun Watson expected to start. I don't know if you play him, but Arizona's at least a good matchup. Jerome Ford should be in your lineup, as well as Kareem Hunt. Both have been viable on the ground. And then Amari Cooper and David Njoku in the passing game are solid. For Arizona, we've never seen Clayton Tune really on the field with starters. So do you want to play Keontae Ingram in the backfield? No. Cleveland's got a good defense. If you are desperate and have to play Trey McBride or Marquise Brown, that's probably the long and the short of it. But this is a tough matchup for a rookie quarterback in his first and probably only start of the season, unless Kyler Murray gets hurt again. Cleveland, though, massive home favorites, getting their starting quarterback back. Seems like a no-brainer, but we've seen some wild stuff. Who gets the win?
Yeah, good luck trying to figure out the quarterbacks for this freaking game. Man, if Watson can get through the entire game, boy, so how about a $230 feeling of remorse for the Browns this year? Oh boy, you're stuck with them. Browns, the far better team here by 1.5 miles, only loss at home the Browns have had. Yeah, that was to the Ravens. It's very hard seeing the lowly Cards stealing one here. Even P.J. Walker should be able to move the ball here. I'm picking the Browns.
I'm taking the Browns as well. At this point, it's just too much talent. If Arizona had Kyler Murray, I might kick it around because Deshaun Watson does not look good in his time on the field this year. But it's Clayton Tune. I think Myles Garrett just has a field day, and he dominates this game, and Cleveland wins very easily. Water is a good thing to have.
Water, generic sponsor definitely for today.
Yeah. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams going to Green Bay to play the Packers.
Love this matchup.
Matthew Stafford officially listed as questionable is a true game time decision. Most likely not going to play. And they've brought up a third quarterback, which I know this year we have the emergency quarterback, so maybe that's not as much of a sign, but sure seems to me like he's going to miss. If he is sidelined, it will be quarterback Brett Rippon starting at quarterback. Chargers, Josh Palmer is out for Monday Night Football. Just came through. So one person less we have to talk about then. If Matthew Stafford is out, that makes a big
Your
hit
fantasy
on this
choices
team.
getting less and less more viable all across the board. Yay.
Yeah, if Matthew Stafford, that hurts Puka Nacua badly. It hurts Cooper Kupp. Probably not enough to knock both of them out of your lineup, but it could be a good thing for Tyler Higbee. I think you punt on hopeful on Brett Rippon, even though there's some bad quarterbacks that are going to be played this week and have good games. And I think Darrell Henderson out of the backfield, so you want. For the Packers, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and probably A.J. Dillon, because Aaron Jones has just been a disaster this year. Your best bets. Desperation play of Jordan Love, though, is viable. Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, Rams coming off of a bad loss to the Steelers after and getting stomped by the Cowboys. As bad as both teams have been, Rams are bracing for possible, as you just said, Brett Rippon day, and even he might be a better QB than Jordan Love, who just looked really, really awful for his debut campaign for the Packers. Rams are the better of the two teams here. Somehow, Packers are favored by a field goal. I don't know why, but I even think that's too much. As picking Rams as even if Stafford can't go, yeah, the Packers are that bad.
I'm taking the Packers mostly because I don't trust Brett Rippon. I think it's going to make this offense very, very poor and one-dimensional. I think Green Bay has a lot of pride, and they're going to try and get the job done here. It's going to be an ugly game, and I don't think anybody who's not a Rams or Packers fan is really going to be looking forward to tuning in. But I think the Packers steal one due to the quarterback problems with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, if Stafford plays, that pick is wrong. But I think he's going to be out. I think Brett Rippon's going to be bad, and I think the Packers get the win as a result. Next up, Tampa Bay at Houston. Joel, you were talking before. Baker Mayfield was possibly not going to be in this game. It could have been Kyle Trask. Baker Mayfield's practiced all week. He is off the injury report. He will play. I don't think it's a good matchup for him, but with the bye weeks, maybe need a streaming option. Could be worse. Rachaad White in play this week because Houston has a bad run defense. And, of course, Godwin and Evans should always at least be in consideration, if not lineup blocks for you. For Houston, Nico Collins in your lineup. I don't think Devin Singletary is going to have the best week, but he's going to have a lot of work with the absence of Dameon Pierce. So could be a plug-and-play guy off the waivers or a DFS play for you. Dalton Schultz, this could be a good game. I don't know if you want to go CJ Stroud. The Bucs defense is pretty solid. And then you have dart throws like Tank Dell. That could be good if you are desperate. Tampa Bay, still near the top of that division. Needs wins to stay ahead. Houston, they're not going to get the Jaguars, but a wild card bid is still available if they just win some games. Who gets the win?
Yeah, I think no Pierce is big for the Texans. That definitely helps the Bucs. Woods is also dinged up, and you're just looking at Evans and Godwin. You just put up enough to get her done. Ditto from Rachaad White, and yeah, as you just mentioned, Baker limited at practice, and you tend to know that when Baker plays injured, even if he doesn't have any official injury designation, his numbers drop. Meanwhile, you'll have CJ Stroud, who, when he's just, clean pocket under pressure, just boom, the guy may not be sexy for fantasy, but he can just absolutely get her done himself. And Tampa Bay in the NFL is number 28 in pressure, despite being number 5 with blitzing. So I just think the big issue is Baker, and I don't think we're going to see, as you mentioned before we press the button, you don't think we're going to see Kyle Trask this week, but Are we going to see a little bit of a hobbled Baker Mayfield? Injured quarterback, I think, definitely tips the scale just a little bit. And both of these teams are equally ugly in their own ways. I hope I'm wrong here. I'm choosing the Texans.
I'm taking Tampa in this one. Houston lost to Carolina last week. That raises a lot of doubts on its own. No Damian Pierce, Nico Collins has been up and down. Tank Dell on the milk cart in the last few weeks. CJ Stroud has not quite looked as good as he started the season. He still looks okay. Still looks fine. But he started the season so hot, he has definitely come back down to earth. Godwin finally got off the shine, got a touchdown against Buffalo. Mike Evans had a touchdown in that game as well. And they were competitive with a good team for the first time all season. I think that's going to be something they can actually rally around, even though they did lose to Buffalo. Go into Houston, take care of business. And I'm not worried about Baker Mayfield. Practicing full all week, no injury designation. If he gets banged up in this game, hopefully it's late enough where they can have a nice lead and even Kyle Trask can't throw it away. But I'm going to take Tampa Bay in this one. Houston, I got to see it after you lose to Carolina. I got to see something that makes me believe that that was a fluke instead of maybe Houston was overperforming early and now they're a little worse off for wear. Next up, Washington at New
Speaking
England.
of more bad teams,
Taylor Heineke and Mac Jones in this
Right.
one. Heineke's been a top quarterback for fantasy this year in a points per game basis. I believe he's number 8 in points per game from the quarterback position. So we've seen some teams light up New England. Taylor Heineke could be there as well. And if you're going to play him, you got to play McLaurin. You got to play Logan Thomas. This could be a sneaky game for Brian Robinson out of the backfield, but not someone you're excited to throw in your lineup because New England tends to be pretty decent against the running game. For the Patriots, pass. Maybe Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas, the receiver for New England, who's been very hyped this season. Now he's going to be the number 1 with Devontae Parker out and Kendrick Bourne out for the season. So maybe him. Hunter Henry at tight end is always going to be an option because tight ends are garbage outside of the top 4 or 5. And then Zeke Elliott and Ramondre Stevenson, they're in a timeshare. Neither one of them is great. You may have to play them, but I don't think it's something you want to put in your lineup. But New England, 2-6, one of the worst teams in football. Washington somehow better than them, even though they just traded away Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat, who did sign a massive extension, 4 years, almost $100 million, with the Chicago Bears today. Who gets the win of this one?
A very ugly contest. And I tend to think Washington has the better offense of the two. I think they get a very ugly win in Foxborough as New England has cluster injuries in the wide receiver room, and they just lost their number 1 receiver for the year, picking Commanders.
I'm taking Washington as well. They're better at the running back position, I think. They're better at the receiver. They're better at the quarterback. And the defense is not enough of a difference to sway me in any other direction. I'm going to take Washington in this one. I've seen New England lose twice to Miami. They've struggled against the Jets. They've looked really bad. So I'm going to take Washington. Next up, Chicago.
Speaking of wrong one.
Yeah, Chicago at New Orleans. Still no Justin Fields, so I think that limits a lot of this offense. DJ Moore and Cole Kmet in the passing game still viable, but temper your expectations. New Orleans has a good defense. Roschon Johnson should have a lot of role in this one. We'll see how it feels and how it looks on Sunday, but it's not a great situation to play any of the Bears for the most part. For the Saints, Derek Carr's had a good stretch of fantasy performances lately. Coincides with the return of Alvin Kamara, and the screen game has been working. Alvin Kamara has been one of the best running backs in football since he came back from his suspension in week number 4. Alvin Kamara will be in your lineup. Taysom Hill, I think, at tight end, you have to consider it at the very least. He probably is someone that should be in a lineup every single week at this point. And Olave and Michael Thomas at wide receiver, even though they've both been a little disappointing. Chicago's defense leaves that door wide open. And don't forget Rashid Shaheed. Great name, hard to say on command. He's that deep threat. He can get 2 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns and be a fantasy gold mine. So keep him in mind as well. New Orleans, another team in the NFC South that's in contention because they're just floating around 500. Chicago, Tyler Bagent at the quarterback has not been what he was week 1 against the Raiders. Of course, the Raiders had all their issues that we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Who gets the win here?
Oh, yeah, definitely a ugly matchup. I think the Chargers just scored on the Bears again with an aftershock, like an earthquake. Bears were god awful against a good offense, and the Saints seem to be getting more into a kick-ass form lately with their offense that was a little bit questionable early on. We've already had Godwin and Deontay ending their TD curse. Yeah, please, fantasy gods, let Olave get in the end zone and no effing flags. Please, I'm picking Saints to go marching into a win.
Yeah, I'm taking the Saints as well. I don't believe Tyler Bagent's going to be able to get the job done. New Orleans offense started to come alive in the last couple of weeks. I'm going to take the Saints. Moving on, Indianapolis.
Call it the Alvin Kamara effect.
Yeah, exactly. Indianapolis at Carolina, the Frank Reich revenge game, as both these teams are not very good. For the Colts, I think
still a better matchup than the next game.
Yeah, I do think that Gardner Minshew is a streaming option this week. Carolina's defense is very poor. I think Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman definitely in your lineup, as well as Joshua Downs if he is healthy enough to play. He is questionable right now. For Carolina, Chuba Hubbard's going to take over the starting job, at least for this week. I don't know if it's injury or performance, and Miles Sanders has not been getting it done. Probably a little bit of both. So Chuba would be the player to watch, but this could be a double-headed monster with Sanders because the Colts defense is terrible. Adam Thielen, definitely in your lineup, and if you really are desperate, Bryce Young against this defense could have his best game, which isn't saying much, but we have a lot of injuries. We have a lot of quarterbacks that are not playing that normally would be, and then 4 teams on bye on top of it. So it's possible you need one of these two in your starting lineup this week. 2 bad teams. Who gets the win?
Yeah, it's a case of Carolina isn't good, and Indy isn't bad as Carolina got off the schneid last week, but don't look for a win streak to begin here as Indy beat Baltimore early in the season. So this team is tougher than their record appears. I think Indy gets their 4th win here in a potentially ugly game, total of 44. Indy not even favored by a field goal. Hard picking Carolina here. Got to swipe on Indy.
Yeah, I'm going to take Indy as well. Carolina, after a good win against Houston, you still are not quite ready to be a team we can count on. I think we're going to just see Indianapolis have too much talent in this one. Jonathan Taylor should have a very good game. Some of you are definitely playing for the Colts, and I think that's going to be enough. Zach Moss should have a good game as well as the Colts get into the win. Next up, I mean, it could be worse, but Vegas is somehow. Do you know the line in this game? Vegas is like a 2-point favorite. They just fired their head coach, their GM, they're benching their starting quarterback, and they're a 2-point favorite over the New York Giants. They are at home, so that's part of it. Daniel Jones should be coming back this week. Daniel Bellinger at tight end to replace Darren Waller in super deep or tight end premium leagues. Maybe don't get cute. I think for the Giants, it's Saquon Barkley and Wan'Dale Robinson and nobody else. Maybe Daniel Jones again. Deep week for quarterback problems and injuries and bye weeks. For Vegas, Aiden O'Connell at quarterback was very good for Josh Jacobs the first time he played. A lot of catches for Josh Jacobs. First touchdown of the season was in that game as well. And he hyper-targeted Devontae Adams. So I think you're going to keep your 2 studs from the Raiders in your lineup. Don't worry about it. But outside of that, Jacoby Myers is a very sketchy flex play. I don't know if he can support Jacobs, Adams, and Myers.
This amazing matchup has the Raiders favored 1.5 with over and under of 37.5.
Now, one thing that we do have to say is when you fire Josh McDaniels, I think you get better. So the Raiders are coming in happy. It is very well known. The Raiders are happy. The players are happy that McDaniels is gone. The Giants getting Daniel Jones back. I mean, it's 2 bad teams, but someone in theory has to win this game. Who gets it done?
Yeah, who to choose here in the Suck Bowl Week 9? As I definitely have to begin by saying that I'm going to lean with the Raiders because of the ding dong, the witch is dead boost after the house cleaning by Mark Davis. Giants had negative pass yards last week. Negative freaking pass yards.
Now that was with Tyrod Taylor, and don't call me Danny DeVito.
Okay, now you'll have to realize that right now Raiders don't have any quality coach. Quarterback coach is calling plays. Head coach is a defensive minded person. Right now, you have to realize who's the Raiders trying to please the most right now. Yeah, that would be Davante Adams, especially after all the drama. The offense is going to try to throw in more now that McDaniels is he gone. I really don't think that the Raiders have a home field advantage per se. As the one thing, the one hesitation that I think you tend to have with the Raiders is that even though you do have Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead boost, yeah, when you have all the coaches fired, uh, yeah, you kind of have to wonder about how intact the leadership is and whatever the new philosophy is that they're trying to impose on the player base as opposed to the old philosophy. So who knows? But still, I definitely have to pick the Raiders just because of how god awful the Giants are. I mean, I know the Raiders aren't much better, but yeah, of the two teams, got to pick the Raiders.
Um, Adding to that, the Giants have now placed Tyrod Taylor and Darren Waller on IR, breaking as of a minute ago.
Boy,
So not good. I mean, we knew they were going to be out this game, so it doesn't affect things, but it doesn't help the mentality when you have more talented players go on your IR. But I do think you saw last year the Colts, their first game with Jeff Saturday looked like a team possessed, beat the Raiders with the dead cat balance, and I think that's what we're going to see. I'm agreeing with you. I think Vegas is going to get the job done. I think it's going to be a very ugly game, but I think they're going to be smart with Aiden O'Connell, protect him the best they can, say, hey, you've got Davante Adams in the passing game. If he's not open, maybe just be ready to throw it away. Keep an eye out for wide open guys, but focus on your best player. And they're going to ride Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is due for a big breakout game. And this might be it. This could be the one. So I'm going to take Vegas as well. Next up, the last game, the best game in the late window. Dallas at Philadelphia. Of course, this is always a very hyped game. But Philadelphia, the best team in football at 7-1. Dallas 5-3. Big game for them. If they lose this game, they're 3 games back at Philadelphia just after the midway point of the season. If they can beat Philly in Philly, well, it says something about the Dallas Cowboys long term. Maybe they can still get back in this race. I don't know. For Dallas, you're going to play Dak Prescott. You're going to play CeeDee Lamb because the Philadelphia Eagles' pass defense is not spectacular. Tough matchup for Tony Pollard. You can't bench him, but a tough matchup here. Jake Ferguson at tight end, an option as well. And Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. If you are desperate, need somebody, good options on the back end. For the Eagles, you're going to play Jalen Hurts. You're going to play A.J. Brown. You're probably going to play Devonta Smith and Swift. You're going to play Dallas Goedert at the tight end position. A battle between two NFC East juggernauts. Who gets the win?
Yeah, right now I think Prescott is the healthier of the two QBs of interest here. And I think Prescott can go 4-0 against the Eagles as Dallas has had the stomping of the 49ers, woke them up as they soundly beat Herbert and the Chargers on Monday Night Football, and then just decimated the ever-living snot out of those poor Rams. I mean, that was just a beatdown. I think the momentum can be carried forward here. Still early in the season. We're not approaching clutch time yet when the Detroit when the Dallas House of Cards folds. So I think the Cowboys can get a Week 9 dub here against Fly Eagles Fly.
I'm going to take the Eagles as the home team in this one. This is a very tough one to pick. I think it could very well go either way. but I'm going to trust Jalen Hurts in this Philadelphia team that's been getting the job done all year long. Even though they haven't looked their best, Dallas has fallen off a cliff every time they've lost, and it's definitely something we can see happening. Philadelphia's had one rough game all year, and they still had a shot to win it. I'm going to take Philadelphia here, and they start to separate themselves in that division. All right, next up, Sunday Night Football. Last time this game happened on a night, Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field, and the game was canceled. We are very hopeful that does not happen again, obviously, but
Here.
Buffalo going to Cincinnati. Buffalo 5-3. Cincinnati a resurgent 4-3. I think it's if you've got them, you can start them in this game. Buffalo, you're going to play Allen. You're going to play Diggs. You probably should play Gabe Davis. Leonard Fournette was signed. I think James Cook is still the running back one, but he's been tough for Cincinnati.
I love the Fournette quote about how cold it is in Buffalo. Yeah.
Oh, yes, we can't say it, but yes, it is. Also, Dalton Kincaid at tight end has been very good since Dawson Knox left the lineup. For Cincinnati, Joe Burrow is in your lineup. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even Tyler Boyd could have a good game here. And of course, Joe Mixon out of the backfield. This is a game between two Super Bowl contending teams, at least in theory. Given Cincinnati was off to a very bad start, they're now above 500 after starting 1-3. Buffalo, they've looked dominant at times, and lately they've looked vulnerable a lot more often than not. Who gets the win?
Yeah, right now you have Burrow, who looked fully healthy last week. And you have to remember, Cincinnati beat Buffalo in the playoffs last year. Allen's been hurt this year. Might be what's leading to the point move on the game. And you definitely have to have some concern for the Bills as you look at that 49ers game and that Cincinnati won. And was that more because San Francisco was playing bad? Because Cincinnati barely had any positive plays in the first half last week. But that being said, while the Bengals have come back to life after the slow start, and the Bills barely escaped the Bucs last week on Thursday Night Football, I'm picking the Bengals here, and Mr. Chase, who is always bleeping open.
I'm taking the Bengals as well. I don't root for the Bills in general just because I don't want to, but the last few weeks since that Dolphins beatdown game, they have looked mediocre. They could have lost to the Giants. They could have lost to the Buccaneers, and they did lose a couple games before that. So Cincinnati has turned the ship around. They have been playing a lot better. Joe Mixon getting involved. Jamar Chase, one of the best receivers. T. Higgins showing signs of life last week. Joe Burrow looks 100% healthy, and Cincinnati has a good track record against Buffalo to begin with. Buffalo has not looked like the team we were all expecting. And coming into this season, the defense is really banged up. And I don't think Leonard Fournette fixes that or the offense. So, yes, you got who was it they got from the Packers? It was a cornerback, Rasul Douglas, I think it was. They got from the Packers. That also doesn't fix your defense. It's going to help, but it's not going to fix it. I think Cincinnati runs away with this one. And Buffalo, at the end of the week, they're looking at a team that maybe is starting to have some doubt on their full season outlook. Next up, a game that determines very little, but can Zach Wilson look good again in prime time, and can the Chargers avoid charging it up is really how this game needs to be considered. For the Chargers, you're going to play Eckler, you're going to play Herbert, you're going to play Keenan Allen. No Joshua Palmer, as we talked about a little bit ago when it came out that he is officially out. So that could be the end of the list for the Chargers offensive players you want. Quentin Johnson, you got to be real desperate for him to play. For the Jets, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, probably it, although the Chargers have a bad defense, so maybe Zach Wilson can do something in this one as well. Jets are 4-3, Chargers are 3-4. Are both teams going to exit this 500, or the Jets going to make another statement in primetime?
Yeah, because you're looking at hopefully Justin Herbert having a big game, even though I know a lot of people call him Mr. Check Down, even though all those short passes, guess what? That's how you tend to beat the Jets. But on the other hand, you have to watch out because The Jets forces the most turnover passes in the NFL, right next to Jacksonville. So Herbert really needs to watch that, as Jets have the better defense. Chargers have the better offense, but I think the Chargers, as long as they keep those dumb bleeping penalties that we saw versus that versus that Dallas game, that both teams were absolutely shooting themselves in the foot big time, to a minimum. I think the Chargers can get the win here. Just hope that Staley doesn't do anything stupid. Like you have the Arthur Smith factor out in Atlanta, you have the Brandon Staley factor in Charger land. So I'm picking the Chargers, just with a little bit of caution to watch out, because Jets can surprise you. You never know.
Yeah, the Jets can surprise you, and it seems like Zach Wilson shows up better in prime time against great quarterbacks on the other side of the field. He showed up in relief of Aaron Rodgers week 1 against Josh Allen, got the win against Buffalo. We saw against Patrick Mahomes when Taylor Swift was in New York. Everybody was all, oh, Taylor Swift is in the building, Aaron Rodgers is in the building. Zach Wilson outplayed Aaron Rodgers. There are a bunch of people that had never watched football, but Taylor Swift at the game that left going, man, that Zach Wilson guy is really good. He's better than Mahomes. He shows up in these big situations, playing Justin Herbert, playing a team that likes to lose games in dramatic fashion. I have a funny feeling that the Chargers are going to charger it up, and the Jets are going to steal another win and go to 5-3, which would put them in second in the AFC East if the Bills lose as well. So that's our picks. Enough difference that I can have my deficit of about 13 games grow to about 17, but maybe I get lucky and can pull a few back. Joel, I am coughing, so we're going to give you final thoughts.
Okay, I just have a parody costume final thought, and two very brief ones after, as you always have to love the NFL memes with the parody costumes, and it's a picture of Josh McDaniels. Soon to be unemployed middle-aged man includes a dumb-looking visor, unlimited excuses, not hot Italian quarterback, in parentheses, he sucks, and dirt on Mark Davis, and the final thing is worst defense in the league despite being, quote, an offensive genius. Worst offense in the league. And then the two brief final thoughts. One with the Raiders is, they had themselves a week, as Raiders wished Jimmy Garoppolo a happy birthday one day after he got benched. Good job, social media team. And the Chiefs wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling on traveling to Germany for a game versus Dolphins. His quote, "It sucks." And those are my final thoughts.
I'm going to expand on my final thought from last one. The Sharks are now 1 point in 10 games, and they celebrated that by getting 1 goal and giving the other team 10. The Sharks might be the worst team in recent sports history, and they make me cry.
Did you see the poor picture of the kid? This is my first Sharks game, and they lost it like 8-0 something.
10-1.
Poor kid.
It's a bad team. They need to trade away their veterans and get those picks and really just have that firm rebuild. But the Sharks, they still have a 0 in the win column. One of several teams to not have a 0 or not have a number that's not 0 in every column. It's fun. Also, thank you to the Titans for not winning that game and making me wear this stupid Bumblebee jersey, because the only Steelers want to have one of the worst jerseys ever in sports to go around with one of the worst hockey teams and sports teams in the San Jose Sharks, who has one of the best jerseys in sports. So, hate this jersey, hate the Sharks for being bad, but great jerseys for the Sharks, good team for the Steelers, bad jerseys. Anyways, that's our time before I start coughing again. Hopefully next week will be better. Week after that's going to be a little funny because I am going to Buffalo to watch the Jets and Bills in Buffalo. So hopefully I won't freeze. But yeah, with that, I am flying Ryan Gokers along with
Tampa Motor Mouth Joel Verl.
And with that,